Could this be the perfect street photography camera? It certainly looks good, but stick around and we'll find out. So I shoot urban landscapes and street photography, and I've always used the Canon 5D Mark III. It's a fantastic camera, but it's not exactly discreet and you do have to carry alternative lenses, so it can be a little bit of a pain when you're out in the street. The other camera that I sometimes use is the Ricoh GR1. That's an amazing camera, it feels so good in the hand. You can be like a little bit of a ninja on the street, people don't really notice that you're taking shots. It's amazing, but it is a film camera and the hit rate isn't always there. Sometimes you miss a shot and yep, that's my problem, but it's just not reliable enough. So I've been looking for something that fits in between these that can solve the problem, and I think I might just have found the answer.
So this is it, the Fuji X100F, and the first thing that you notice is the fantastic retro styling. It's a classic rangefinder style camera with the manual dials for changing settings quickly. I'll leave a link below to the full specs, but needless to say, this camera is not lacking in any department. The main features, however, are the 24.3 megapixel X-Trans sensor, which is APS-C size, the fixed 23mm lens, which is the 35mm equivalent, which has a maximum aperture of f2, the improved autofocus system and the dual hybrid LCD electronic viewfinder. We'll look at all of these more closely, but I couldn't wait to get out on the streets with it. One of the first things that I wanted to check was how usable the camera was in the street, and I was pleased to say that it actually was very intuitive. The manual dials on the camera are very easy to understand, and certainly if you've used an older camera they'll come very naturally to you. But I'm also pleased to say that the menu structure on the camera is basic but very easy to understand. However, the real beauty of this camera was the size and the ergonomics. It was easily pocketable, certainly in a coat pocket, and it was very quick to start up, meaning it was ideal for street situations when you just needed to grab a shot and move on. And the camera is certainly discreet enough that it doesn't draw too much attention, yet it brings professional quality results with that fantastic 24 megapixel sensor. But more about the image quality later. For now I was still just enjoying using the camera, and at no time at all I found myself very at home with how to change settings and how to actually use the camera. And this is where Fuji have built on previous successes in the X series range. Cameras are very much a tool and they should be used like that and left to fall into the background while you concentrate on getting the shot. In addition to the great handling of the camera, the build quality is also there to match. Everything feels sturdy, nothing feels cheap, and it feels like it's built to last. The only slight letdown in this department is the lack of full weather sealing. Even though it's a fixed lens camera, it would have been nice to see the camera be fully protected, especially as it's intended to be used in the street and certainly in rainy conditions. But the pros certainly outweigh the cons with this camera, and one of those major pros is that f2 lens. Being a fixed focal length, it's important that you remember that you're going to have to zoom with your feet, and sometimes you can find yourself a little too far away from the shot, but if you're prepared to get up close, it's really rewarding. I found the lens to be really sharp and at f2 fast enough for most situations. I would like to see Fuji throw in a lens hood with the camera though, as the lens is slightly prone to flare, but that's only really in bright situations and a hood's easy enough to pick up. However, the lens itself is fantastic and certainly no complaints in that department. One of the other major selling points with this camera is the autofocus system. I found it exceptionally responsive and rarely did I miss a shot down to missing a focus point. The other exceptional point is the joypad, which sits just under your right thumb and easily allows you to control the focus point while shooting. The only slight frustrations with the handling of the camera were the ISO control, which is set into the shutter speed dial, which can slow you down at times, and it would have been nice to see a dedicated ISO control. And the other thing is the exposure compensation. which I found myself knocking on quite a regular basis, certainly while the camera's in a pocket. This is easily compensated for if you've got a case, but it was something that frustrated me from time to time. Possibly the most important aspect of any camera though is how it handles different situations and what it's actually putting out at the end. Being a fixed focal length, a camera like this isn't really designed for sports or wildlife, but I actually found it to be incredibly versatile and could certainly see it being used in a lot of different situations. I couldn't help but think that it was almost the perfect travel camera, and as well as being versatile enough for amateur photographers to use, it's certainly got enough features for pro photographers to get the grips on as well. One of those features was the electronic viewfinder, which I found to be amazing. Coming from the Canon 5D Mark III, which doesn't have an EVF, it was an absolute joy to use, and I can't understand why most cameras don't have one. The hybrid LCD worked perfectly in all conditions. Throw in the large LCD screen on the back and you've got a winning combination. However, it would have been nice if that screen was articulating. I found myself in certain situations where it would have been so much easier to flip the screen out to get the angles that I was after. The camera also shoots video, and for vloggers and filmmakers, an articulating screen is a bit of a must. I won't go into the video capabilities of the camera today, but it is useful to know that it does shoot video as well. It wasn't long before I fell in love with this camera, and it more than met my needs as a street photography camera and for use in urban landscapes, though it still had a couple of surprises up its sleeve. Most notably was the quality of the images. I actually found myself a little bit blown away by how good the images were. There was great dynamic range, really good sharpness, and that sensor and lens combo were really working well together. I'll link to my blog post below where you can see some of the sample images, and even though you might not be a fan of my editing style or the way that I take my photos, it gives you a good idea of what you can produce with this camera. It's also important to remember that even though it is a fixed lens, that 24 megapixel sensor certainly gives you enough room to crop your images and make the most of a particular scene. The final thing that really got me with this camera was its low light performance. With a native ISO of 200 to 12,800, I wasn't really expecting much with this camera. However, even shots at 3200 was super clean, and I couldn't quite get my mind at how this little camera was producing such good quality low light images. Even after it got too dark to carry on filming with the Sony, we carried on shooting some street scenes. I was absolutely stunned that I was shooting at around 3200 ISO and still getting some really clean images. The small camera really was doing an incredible job in low light situations.
So what are my final thoughts on the Fuji? Well, to be honest, I've been absolutely blown away by it. It's an amazing little camera. It's perfect for street photography, and as long as you don't need the versatility of different lenses, it's a fantastic option. Will it replace the 5D Mark III? Maybe not for commercial work, but definitely for street photos. I'd love to be using this. There are a few little things that do kind of irritate me at times, like knocking the exposure compensation, but I think that's me rather than the actual camera itself. Some of the highlights are the EVF, which has been incredible, and I love the lens. I think it's a fantastic lens, and the low light performance has been brilliant. So it really does come highly recommended. I would strongly suggest going into a camera shop and actually holding it so you get a feel for it yourself. But they are a fantastic little camera. If you've used one, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know how you found it. And if you've got any alternatives, do put them in the comments below and we'll check those out as well. And if you've liked the video, please give it a like. And also, if you're not already, hit the subscribe button for more videos in the future. Thank you very much.